and welcome to Podcast and Curious with your host, me, Galina Rivina. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I'm doing another episode with a guest, which is great because you guys don't have to listen to me ramble confused for 40 minutes, and I don't have to do it. So that's a huge plus for me and you both. I'm really excited. I have my friend on today, hilarious comedian Jeffrey Baldinger. Hi, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Thank you for being here. How have you been?
I've been okay, this is you're the first person I've talked to out loud, not via text, in a literal week. So that's
No.
no, it's true. It's true. This well, because it was raining the
Mm-hmm.
past few days, and that just made me turn off all the lights and just and hunker on down, And so yeah, I haven't left my apartment in a while. This is getting too sad, but I've
But
been
that gets
okay.
weird though. I know what you mean when I've just been like texting people all day and you get to a point and you're like, oh no, I haven't spoken today. And if it wasn't for my having a
Yeah,
dog, I would maybe would have reasons to not even like use my voice for the day. And
yeah.
that's such a weird feeling when you're like, oh, I'm making noise for the first time today.
It is weird because I have to like announce things so I remember what human voice sounds like, even if it's only my own. I have to just like, I need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I am going to the kitchen to eat something. I have to do that. And what's typically what'll happen is my niece will call me and we'll have like a FaceTime chat or whatever. But she was visiting her grandparents in Missouri
Oh.
for the past like week, and so two different worlds. Mom side, dad side. So when she's with mom's side of the family, she's all on board with them, which is absolutely what she should be doing. But
Hmm.
that means I don't get the daily call.
Oh
It means
no.
I don't have the like somebody who's talking to me. So it's just like I'm just like, okay, so I don't have the call. So I like today is Tuesday, right?
Mhm.
It's Tuesday, and
Well,
I is it?
yeah, it is. It
It
is
is
Tuesday.
Tuesday. It's
See, even
Tuesday
I had to think about it and I'm doing stuff.
because I woke up this morning and I thought to myself, is it still Tuesday
Oh
or
no.
is it Tuesday again? You know what I mean? Like, because I fell asleep on a Tuesday. That
Mhm.
was the last time I spoke to anybody out loud, which was last Tuesday.
Oh, you're not kidding.
I'm not kidding.
You should have texted me or something. We could
I
have gone
would
on
have,
a
but I
walk.
was in this state of I don't know what to do. You know what? You know when that happens when you're just like I don't know what to do
Hmm.
with communication right now. I don't know. I feel like quarantine has been okay overall for
Yeah.
me, but it's like that scene in Shawshank Redemption where Morgan Freeman reads like, these walls are funny. First you resent them, then you get used to them, then you don't know how you live without them. That's
Oh,
been
whoa.
my experience.
And that's my first time hearing that quote because I never saw the movie. So I'm just like reacting in real time to that quote and I am just aghast because it
It's so real.
feels so real. But let me make you feel less crazy right now by telling you that like just before we started recording this, I was getting all of these notifications on Nextdoor app and Citizen, which are
Okay.
both like not for healthy people to be on either of those apps. Like I know it's such a red flag that I'm on them. I it doesn't help my anxiety, it just fuels it if anything, but I'm like addicted to it in this weird way where I'm like,
Yep.
I love the drama. Show me all the neighborhood drama. What is on fire so I can go drive by it and feel better?
You read the comments before you watch the video, is what you're
I
saying.
do read the comments, and there's comments on Citizen and Nextdoor, and that's like part of the gold of being on there, is
What are
that
those
people who
comments
comment
like?
are like the craziest people, and so you're just gonna have something really good to read.
Oh my
But what I
god.
saw today was first, okay, so first I saw it on Citizen app, and then I got an email about it on Nextdoor. There's a group of 20 people, according to one of the apps, it was 20 people. Were going up and down all the grocery stores on Third, like between Fairfax and La Brea. So
Uh-huh.
if you're familiar with Los Angeles, it's like, what would you call that? Like Miracle Mile or Fairfax District. It's
Miracle
like a,
Mile adjacent. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they're kind of ritzy grocery stores over there. Anyway, it was a
They got
mob
a
of 20
Gelson's.
people They might have hit the Gelsons. I know they hit.
They have a big Ralph's.
There's a okay, so the Ralphs and the Trader Joe's across from it and the Erewhon that's by the Grove all got hit by this gang of 20 people who are anti-maskers who went to
Oh
each of
my
those stores
god.
just to fight the employees. It's not
Oh
it
Lord.
is because you're like, oh, these 20 people, like, regardless of what I'm going through, I'm not where they are. Because imagine
Yeah.
if you have to be with yourself that you're like, I'm going to join up with 19 other people and go fight the cash register guy at Trader Joe's. Like, what?
Those are the people that are the epitome of I refuse to look inward. Everything is I can't stand quarantine because it makes me look within myself to see what's
Mhm.
actually wrong. I have to look at outward forces that I'm the victim, and so that it's everybody else's fault. It's certainly nothing repressed in my history. No, 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 no.
No, no, no. I'm
It's
going to go fight.
clearly it's clearly the cashier at Ralph's that's the
Yeah.
problem. That's the issue.
Oh man, and it's like what these cashiers have they not been through enough? Like you're gonna pick on essential workers right now?
It's
Really?
insane that
Oh,
the amount of videos you see on like TikTok or Instagram or
hmm.
any of these videos where it's the people who are just like yelling, it's like, I have a right to, you are discriminating against me for not wearing my mask inside, and it's a health issue, and I'm going to call the cops on you. And it's like, you clearly never had a problem with the no shirt, no shoes, no service policy,
Nope.
but I, it's the same policy. It's
It's
the
the same
exact
policy.
same policy. You
And
wouldn't
if
walk
it's so
outside like
upsetting, order your get an Instacart account. Have your
seriously.
groceries delivered. You don't have to. If you don't want to wear a mask to the store, I get it, but then just don't go to the store.
It's like, look, I don't wear pants for me. You
Sure.
know, like it's for everybody else. It's like have that sense of decency. Like, hey, it's not about if you're alone, don't wear a mask. Fine.
Yeah.
You know, if you're alone, fine. But if you're going to a public place, follow the rules of the establishment that you're going into.
And like
It's a private establishment.
just can't believe, right? This is the kind of thing that I would have expected to happen over the summer, but this is happening like we're recording this the week between Christmas and New Year's when there's literally been the most
Hmm.
infections, like the
And
most.
and the fact that I think we just got awarded we're the epicenter.
Number one.
We're number one in spreading positivity, which is
Uh-huh.
something that we're always like it's always happy for me to hear like, hey, spread that positivity like a virus, you know? It's super good. No negative results here, but it's like the news just came out that we're the epicenter. You know, like
Mhm.
we're the epicenter of the virus, and it's like
They should be arrested for
ma-
like
no mask for me.
biological terrorism, like these 20 people.
Yeah, it's as I said, like I tweeted out today. Just because everyone has a right to their opinion doesn't mean everyone's opinion is right,
Yeah,
and it's like that's
it's such a simple concept.
you can acknowledge that other people have completely different opinions, and you can be like, yeah, I get it. That like everybody has their own opinions, everybody's perspective is unique, and like, hey, think of it from other people's point of view. But it's like, you know, from my point of view, the terrorists are the freedom fighters, and the you know like it's all this like it's first year philosophy rhetoric that it's
Yes.
like, yeah, these are philosophical questions. It's just like, yeah, learn empathy, learn perspective, learn other people grow up differently than other people. You know, it's like it's all important, but it's also important to recognize uh, the health of the society that you live in, and to be able to function as a society, it can't be chaos.
But that is so anti-American because we
True.
just want our freedom.
We just want our freedom. Well, we want it as long as it doesn't infringe on our day to day life.
Right. This has been the first time in so many. What has been so incredible about this pandemic in 2020 as a whole, just to like wrap it up, is this is the first time we're seeing a lot of people have to be inconvenienced in any way.
This is
The
this is
first experience they've had with not getting what they want, and it is not going over well.
it's unfortunate that the name An Inconvenient Truth has already been taken
Right.
as a movie title, because when the movie comes out about this pandemic, that is the proper title for it. I never saw the movie, but I've heard some things. I heard that it was all right about the quote climate crisis.
Well, I haven't seen it because I haven't seen most movies. I'm very behind
That's
on
true.
movies.
No, it's okay. You see the movies that you want to see. That's
I watched
nobody can
Titanic
see
and,
everything,
the Fast and Furious movies repeatedly.
and that is what matters.
I don't
Now
have
let
a
me
lot of
ask you
range,
this. Let me
and
ask
I'm
you
okay with
this.
it.
That's fine. You don't need a lot of range. You just need a lot of talking points. You don't need
Yeah.
to know. This is the age of reading the headline and assuming. It's like I get the gist of what it's trying to say, and you read enough headlines and sporadically enough articles to read what the headline is clickbaiting you to get. It's like, okay, this is probably not as bad as the headline's making it out to. You can get the gist of it by going like, oh, they probably said something offhand like, I don't wear a mask in my house. So and so's anti-mask because of personal freedom. It's like, well, that's not really what they said, but I get the
Yeah.
gist of what you're trying to do. Let me ask you this, because you do only watch a few movies. Specifically, you watch the Fast and the Furious franchise like a
Mhm.
lot.
A
Like you'll
lot.
watch it over and over again. Like you probably know each movie word for word. I'm assuming, but like you probably could. You probably like if somebody was like, "Oh, you remember this part in the movie?" and they kind of described it,
Uh-huh.
and you're like, well, actually, that's not exactly what happened. This is exactly what like that's probably what you would do.
Which is not like a skill set that I intentionally became braggadocious about, but here we are.
Here we are, and
It's one
here's
of
my
those things where I'm like, I'm kind of kidding, but I'm not.
right. So here's my question to you: are you a gatekeeper fan?
What does that mean?
So that means like when somebody else says like, "Oh yeah, I like those movies," are you like, "Oh awesome, me too," or are you like, "Really?"
Oh,
Do
I
you
see.
do you test other people who say that they're fans?
No, I do not. I am not a
Okay.
gatekeeper fan because I love for people to get excited about something I'm excited about, even if they're not a little bit on my level.
Okay.
Um, because here's why, because I like things, and it's so perfect that we're talking about the Fast and Furious. Some of the things that I like, some people might dismiss as embarrassing or shallow or not being
Mm-hmm.
very highbrow entertainment, but that's part of what's fun for me about it is like
Yep.
I love it because it's not highbrow, because it's so ridiculous, it's so corny. Yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and shit on the scripts, but you're not going in there thinking it's gonna get an Academy Award. Like you know
Right.
what you're getting when you watch
Exactly.
that type of movie, and
And you
that's the
love
fun
cars.
of it.
Right? Say that last part again.
Like that's the fun of it for me is that it's so not, something that I can question people, because what you're saying,
Right.
if I were like a gatekeeper fan, I would have to ask like deep, meaningful questions of, oh,
Well,
do you love it so much? Like, tell me what your favorite car
right.
chase scene is.
It's
Like, I
you
can't do
ask
that.
test questions, and it's not
Yeah.
like, and they're not test questions in the sense that they're litmus test questions. So like if you were a gatekeeper fan or whatever, and the first question you might ask somebody's like, oh yeah, when you say like, yeah, I'm a big fan of Fast and the Furious movie, I'm a huge fan of their franchise, and somebody goes, oh yeah, me too. Your gatekeeper first question was like, oh, what's your favorite movie in the franchise?
Uh-huh.
And you'd say it like that, like seems innocuous enough,
Yeah.
but based on your answer, I'm going to know so much about you, and I'm going to
Oh.
know exactly why you think that, and I'm going to have all these assumptions and be like, yeah, go figure. Like, oh, you like Tokyo Drift, you're one of those fans, or are you like Fast 8? Oh,
Uh-huh.
okay, you're a newbie. Okay, you'll get on my level sometime. It's like, oh, or or they're like, I like the first one. It's like, oh, a traditionalist. Okay, yeah, you don't you don't read the expanded universe. All right, come talk to me when you've read the fanfic on the original. Something like that.
Are you saying I should become what I'm hearing is that I should work my way into being a gatekeeper type fan because
Not
now
at all.
hilarious.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm saying that that is the worst type of fan.
It
That's
is though. You're
it's a
right.
fan that makes it impossible to want to be fans. And
Mhm.
certain topics invite those types of fans. Like Star Wars has those types
Yes.
of fans.
Yes.
Most things that are mainstream popular
Mhm.
do have those types of. The Beatles
Mhm.
have those types of fans, and I'm not proud about it. But when I was, in my high school to early college career, I was a gatekeeper Beatle fan. Like
Oh
that's what
no.
I was.
You're apologizing here today.
I am, because it's one of those things where I was for like I was probably a gatekeeper fan for like from 18 to 21. That's when I was a gatekeeper fan. After
How did you
that,
become one?
it was just one of those things where it's like I just didn't believe people who said they liked the Beatles.
Hmm.
Because I was like, oh, you're just one of those people who says they like the Beatles because you don't actually know anything about the Beatles, though. You
Mhm.
just are like, yeah, the Beatles. It's a simple answer, and it's like the simplest answer to give when people are like, oh, what's your favorite band? The Beatles. Very original. It's like, oh, you like the most popular band of all time. That tells me nothing about you. It's like it's almost the same thing as saying I don't like the Beatles
Mhm.
because you like the Beatles. That doesn't give you a personality, just like saying you don't like the Beatles doesn't make you interesting. It's like you're just saying you don't like them because everybody does,
Mhm.
or you're saying you like them because I don't know, it's whatever. So at the time, I was like, but I actually know about the Beatles. Like, I actually am a fan. I actually do. Like, it was that mentality. But then I met somebody like me, and I was like, is this what I'm doing? Oh, gross. This is gross.
Tell me about
I,
that moment.
I'm going to stop this.
When did you get put in your place, and how did this person do it? Because that's really funny that you got slapped into calming down with the gatekeeping.
Well, it's funny because they didn't know more than me. They like knew answers.
Mhm.
Like they gave me test questions, and I was like, "Are you? This is this what I'm doing to people? Because this is disgusting right now. What you're doing." And it was this moment of we were at a house party as my junior-ish year of college,
Mhm.
and Beatles came on, the player or whatever, and I was like bopping my head, and somebody was like, "You like the Beatles?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love. It's a
Do
favorite
it
band.
ever.
Yeah, I like them. I tried to stay calm. It's like I wasn't gonna freak out. I was like, "Yeah, I like the Beatles. What the fuck is your problem? Like, of course I like the Beatles." But I was like, "Yeah, I like the Beatles," and they're like, "What's your favorite album?"
Oh,
And it's one of those things where it's like I knew what they were doing immediately, and I got so mad.
you went on the defense. You're like,
I
I
was
will go
like,
toe to toe with you about this
like
Beatles.
you want like, because then I had to test them.
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, what's my favorite album? I like them all.
Oh no,
That's
that answer.
that's what I said. I like
That's
them
the type
all.
of answer that would infuriate the type of person that would ask that type of question.
Exactly, exactly. And I saw it in their eyes, and
Ooh.
they're like, yeah, well, I mean, of course they're all great, but the later albums are masterpieces. It's like they
What
really
about
started they really started showcasing their real talent when it was like Sergeant Pepper. The B side of Abbey Road, man, that's the masterpiece. That's the masterpiece. And I was like, oh, you think their only greatness was the B side of Abbey Road? You think that? And like I started doing that to them, and it was just this gatekeeper off. I was just like
which is
seeing
so
what they were.
dorky, by the way. Like, let's not skip
So
over
awful.
how nerdy this is, no matter what the subject matter.
Absolutely,
Because
but that's
Beatles
the
isn't even like the nerdiest thing. It's just such a good
no.
example of this. But you could do this even with like
For Fast and the
MMA.
Furious, for MMA, for
Or,
literally anything.
yeah, and it just
Um,
becomes so dorky when you're like, I'm about to read the back of a statistics card that I memorized to you.
exactly. And
Okay, here you go.
the other thing about that literally statistics card is like,
Mhm.
we're speaking facts about the most popular band in the world.
Yeah.
Very easy information to get a hold of, like super easy information to get a hold of. But it's just this thing. And then they go, well, do you know the meaning of this song?
Oh no.
And they started testing me on that. And that was the moment when they asked me, like, do you know what Julia is about?
Hmm.
And I just, like, at that moment, I was just like, you know what? I concede. I'm just going to give one word answers from now on. Julia's about John's mom. And I didn't give them a follow up answer.
Hmm.
They're like, oh, but, what about Martha, My Dear? You know what that one's about? Paul's dog.
But those are actually answers from like somebody that knows.
Right. And that was the moment that I was like, this is insane. If this is how I have ever been to somebody, and I don't think I was ever that intense,
Hmm.
my gatekeeping was more of like eye rolls and just like, oh yeah, I bet you like the psychedelic stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, because that was the change in innovation
Hmm.
during the 60s. Like when they came, it was like the Beach Boys, the Beatles, Motown, uh, all of that change came in like 66, 65, 66 when Rubber Soul, Revolver, and Sgt. Pepper came out, 65, 66, and 67, along with the Beach Boys. Pet Sounds was like this huge innovation in music. So it's like it changed the game. And so a lot of people go to there as far as like, oh my God, this is what proved the Beatles were amazing. And it's just like it's a very easy answer
Hmm.
to go like, hey, where is, what era of the Beatles do you like the most? And it's like, yeah, you can love that stuff, and it is highly innovative and amazing, and I love that era. And Rubber Soul is probably my favorite album, but you can't ignore the early stuff. In my mind, I'm like, the early stuff is amazing too because of the melodic and rhythm and innovation in just general pop music of that time.
Hmm.
Like Paul's melodic bass line was hugely innovative, and Ringo's drumming combined big band swing and country rhythm rock into a pop band, and John Paul obviously were amazing singer songwriters, and George's was great as well. This is like all this stuff that in my mind back then I was like, you hated other fans
Why? Does it make you feel closer to the Beatles somehow? That you like
because you want to own them. Like as a
you're a bigger
fan, you
fan than the
want
next
to
person?
like it's your ownership. It's the same thing with like Star Wars fans. Who's like, not my prequels, not my sequels, not blah 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 blah. I really know what's going on.
Uh-huh.
I am the decider. That's why they're fan. Fan is short for fanatic.
Oh, okay. That's like I think I knew that, but just didn't conscientiously think about it.
Yeah, and so like the past few years, I've been very, very careful about not using the term "I'm a fan of something" unless I'm like
Hmm.
fanatic about that information. Like I'm a fan of the Beatles. I know too much about them.
Hmm.
I've calmed down in my gatekeeperness.
Yeah.
I definitely am like, because to me, it's like the more people know, the better. Because I think they're important in the history. I think that obviously, again, like this isn't my like, I think they're important. It's like they are
But you
important.
do, and they are.
And I do think that I agree with that thought, that
Mhm.
collective thought. It's not my own. That collective thought I agree with, that the Beatles are important. But
What
it's like,
strikes me is that you said earlier, you're like, oh, well, everyone can say, of course, it's your favorite band. It's the most popular band in the world. But I don't even think that, like, if someone today told me that the Beatles are their favorite band, I would be like, oh, you must actually be a legitimate fan because it's not so much like on the zeitgeist right now and hasn't been in a
okay,
long time. So if someone were to say that they like them, it's like they're actively seeking them out because they're not just, you know,
that's fat.
popular, they're not in the news, they're not
See,
current.
that's fascinating to me, and that proves how in the Beatles world I am, because that's the
Mm.
news that I see about. Like Paul McCartney just released another album that reached the top of the charts in the UK and
I
everything
didn't
like
know he
that.
was even alive still, so that's
Yeah,
how we're on different pages.
78 years old and kicking. That's him and Ringo, the only two left alive.
Wow.
Ringo is 80 years young.
Yeah,
at
the
least
fact
in
that you know their ages, like I don't even know some
touring.
of my family members' ages.
I know their ages, their birthdays, and two of their death days.
Oh
It's
no.
insane, and I wish I didn't admit that, but I do. When I did my Europe tour,
Hmm.
I stopped in Liverpool, took the Magical Mystery Tour, visited all of their houses,
Hmm.
all of them. I visited Eleanor Rigby's grave, which
Who is that?
Eleanor Rigby was the sub. So it's kind of weird coincidence, and I don't know if I believe the story or not. But Ellen Rigby is a song written by Paul McCartney in the Beatles era, um, and it was just like what he says is just like that was the name that fit the melody that he had.
Hmm.
Eleanor Rigby, da 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 da. But then there was a grave, like there's a cemetery in Liverpool that there's a grave with the name Eleanor Rigby on it,
Oh,
and it
whoa.
was like that so random, so crazy, so weird coincidence or whatever.
Hmm.
I don't know if I believe that it was like literally coincidence. I think maybe he had seen it as a child and it just kind of stuck with him. That's how he came up with it. But again, that's just speculative headcanon,
Yeah.
you know. Um, but yeah, so like visited the grave, visited Penny Lane, visited Strawberry Fields, and then when I was in London, I visited Abbey Road and Abbey Road Studios, like the whole
So
deal.
you went out of your way to like specifically take Beatles related tours. Do you have a
Yes,
lot of memorabilia of theirs then? Are
I
you
don't have a
really a
lot of
collector?
mem. I mean, I have a lot of their records.
Hmm.
I have all their albums on online, like streaming and like on
Hmm.
iTunes and stuff like that. I have most of their records. I have this poster of Abbey Road,
Very
the
nice.
walk. I have some um, Micro Machines vans of their albums. The Beatles, Meet the Beatles, Magical Mystery Tour, Rubber Soul, and Sgt. Pepper's and the White Album. Um, and then I got my niece a present of a stuffed Blue Meanie, which is the villain from the movie Yellow Submarine.
Cute.
It's awesome, and yeah, so like that, so I don't have like anything of like intrinsic value. Like I'm not a memorabilia collector.
Hmm.
Just have things that are, like I have a poster of the Beatles. I have some albums and that's it. Like there are some Beatles fans who like this is the bass that Paul McCartney played at the Shea Stadium concert. I paid $2 million for it and I
Hmm.
will never play it. It will sit behind a glass case and it will, this will be buried with me, like
Yeah.
stuff like that. I'm not that guy, never gonna be that guy. But
Would you be that guy opportunistically? Let's say like money wasn't an object. Would you be that guy? Because I feel like those guys are that way because like somehow having that bass guitar makes him feel closer to the band, I guess.
yeah, I go back and forth on that
Hmm.
because I would want a replica of the bass. Like if I bought a bass, I would want it to be a Hofner bass, even though they're not the best bass guitars because I like the way it looks. It's like this is awesome, kind of like cool because it's like the Beatles or whatever,
Hmm.
or like getting a Rickenbacker guitar or something like that. Um, but my only issue with getting the actual thing is I would feel bad because it should belong to Paul.
I see. Even if it's something that he's choosing, like let's say he has a thing, he doesn't want it, he wants it to have this
That's
purpose where he's selling
that's
it for
different. If
charity
it
or
was like for charity,
whatever. Hmm.
that's a different story. But if it was like if I could get it somehow,
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take it and it's gonna be mine. It's like I would want, it's like I want the home run ball to go to the player who hit the home run. I want the ball game to go to the guy who won the winning touchdown. I
Yeah.
want that, like they earned it. I didn't like. I'm just a fan. I just like their music. Like they deserve the prize. You know what I mean? Um,
Even if they want to pay it forward.
again, if they are like doing it as a charity thing,
Hmm.
I support that, and I would bid on it. I wouldn't. I would absolutely bid on something like that if money wasn't an object, and
Hmm.
like I mean, I'd still bid on it just like see if I can get it for like $20. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll put the first bid in. Very easy. It'll be very easy to outbid me. I'm horrible on eBay.
So
Um,
you would get an instrument then, or is there anything else? Would you get like a suit that they or like what kinds of memorabilia do you think would be like funny for people to or like interesting for people to get?
I would, like I would love, the Sergeant Pepper suits, any of these outfits
Oh
right
yeah.
there, the
The
white
clothes are
suit,
so iconic.
clothes, the gray Beetle suits, the Beetle boots. I mean, if money was no object, as far as like, I mean, again, it's a little different because I also love costumes. I just like having a range of
Yeah.
costumes. Like I have a killer whale costume, and I'm not saying like it's a killer whale. It's an orca costume,
Hmm.
not like a sick. It's a pretty cheap killer whale costume, and like a jumpsuit. I have a chicken suit. I have a sleeveless sport coat costume with a mullet and a NASCAR wig.
Bedazzled.
It's all like I have costumes, so I would want the costumes just
Hmm.
because like this would be a fun thing to just have. Um, but I wouldn't pay a lot of money for them.
Fair.
I wouldn't go out like I would want the Sergeant Pepper outfits, but if they were more than $50, which they would be, they're like they would be like $500 to $5,000 depending on the condition.
Right.
Uh, no, thank you. No, and that's even if I had the money. It's like, what am I gonna do? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I know that they existed. That's happy for me. I don't need to own them. It's
Yeah.
like what I do love is unique, original stuff. Like this picture, Ray Charles, buddy of mine painted. Jeremy Scipio, you know him,
Yes.
painted this, and I love it not only because it's amazing, but it's like it's one of a kind. It's the only picture of its kind,
Yeah.
and that's what I love. So it's like if I could have like somebody do a painting of them, or this sort of like that's the type of stuff that I love. Like
Hmm.
I met a guy whose dad was the photographer for the album cover Band on the Run, which was one of Paul's solo albums.
Oh, that's a small
And
world.
yeah, and for my dad's birthday, I asked him if he could give me a print of any McCartney or Lennon or Harrison or Ringo, like
Hmm.
any picture that he took that was never published.
Hmm.
And just and he did, and it was like that to
That's
me is the
special.
unique. It's like this one was never in any magazine, never in
Mhm.
any publication. It's a completely wholly unique picture that was just on a roll of film that this
Mhm.
guy never developed, and it was like that's awesome that I was able
That's
to do
really
that.
smart that you even thought to ask for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally like I met like one of the best guys I know.
Mhm.
His dad, is also just super nice and generous. He actually took a picture of me that I've used as a headshot before because like this guy is fucking
Nice.
incredible. And he just like I was eating lunch with him and his son, and he just had his camera with. I was like, smile,
Mhm.
and it's like this is the best picture that's ever been taken of me at the time, and. It was like coming up on my dad's birthday, and I was like, you know what he would? I don't know. I don't even know if this exists,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna ask. And it's like, is there any picture of any of the Beatles that you have that I could, have? you
Mhm.
know? And it was great. It was, my dad loved it, and because he's the one that got me into the Beatles in the first place, and
Oh, okay. I
you
didn't know
know,
that.
yeah, I mean that he didn't get me into him like you have to listen to this and like
Mhm.
this is real music. Like he was never like that. He just listened to them all the time.
Yeah,
So like when
just
he would
around
drive
you.
me places, and it was just like the music that I knew about, and I was so not active in music consumption.
Mm.
Whatever was just given to me was like, all right, this is the music that I'm listening to, and I just started liking it. And it's
Mhm.
like with the Beatles, Dylan, the Stones, Simon and Garfunkel, the Doors, the Who, later on Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, classic rock
Hmm.
era, and then through my brother, I was got into the more contemporary stuff. He was always actively searching out new music, and that's where I would get, classic older brother to the younger brother. I was never the, have you heard of this?
Mm.
It was always like, hey, listen to this. It was like, okay, cool.
You were never the have you heard of this, but then you became the tell me your favorite album guy. What a transition.
I never asked that question though.
Oh, okay. So what
I
were the gatekeeping? What,
I
what would
hate
you ask when you were like bullying other Beatles fans?
it was never I was never the bully. I was always the non-believer. I
Mm.
was the eye roller. I was like, okay. I was always like, my gatekeeping was just a matter of like, yeah, if you know so, like in my head, if you know so much, tell me who Stu Sutcliffe is.
Mm.
It's like that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
for anybody who doesn't know, Stu Sutcliffe was one of the original Beatles in their iteration from 1957 to 1961. He was the bass player. He unfortunately died of a brain tumor back in 1960, and he had quit the band before that. He didn't ever like really play an instrument. It's just he was one of John's art school friends that John wanted to be in the group, and he
Did
ended
he
up
like have musical talent? That's
he
interesting.
could like he could play the bass
Okay.
simply, but like it was just because nobody else wanted to play the bass. Um,
What is it with band? Like, why is that such a ogre, like black sheep of the band instrument?
because I don't know. Like I love the bass. I think it's the bass and the drums are the backbone of any band.
Yeah.
I believe, and
Are you
I
saying that
say
it's kind of like the brakes on a car, like a really fast car?
yes. I would say that if I don't, here's the thing: I don't know anything. If you're gonna gatekeep me on cars, you're perfectly valid in doing that. I know
I
nothing
won't let
about
that be
cars.
this episode.
I, I am, I, I'll say yes without knowing if it's really accurate as to what
Sure.
I'm saying. But like, I think the idea of the bass is just like people want to be the front man, and very rarely is the bass player or the drummer the front man of the
Mhm.
band. It's either the lead guitarist or the rhythm guitarist is the front man. It's like I don't know who the first lead singer bass guitarist was, like solo. Like Paul McCartney was a lead singer of the
Mhm.
Beatles. Him and John were the two lead singers, and Paul played the bass, obviously. But I don't know who the first like solo lead singer of a band was that played the bass. If anybody does know, write it in the comments. But the most famous one uh, in what I think is like probably Sting from the Police. He played bass. He was lead singer. And then as far as drums goes, like very rarely was there a drummer lead singer like
Well, because
Don
that's
Henley
too
or Phil
exhausting to do,
Collins.
and because you're not singing on the same, like, you're not singing to the drums.
Right, and it's very syncopated. So you're doing four different things with all of your hands and feet, and then you
Right.
also have to sing a melody. It's very if you don't know the drums
Hmm.
impeccably, it's going to be hard to do it at the same time. To a lot of people, it is very hard to play and sing at the same time.
And I
Um,
would think that just the main singer, lead singer, is going to get picked based on whose voice is the best, not like, oh, you're not the bass player, you're the guitar player. Like, isn't it
yeah,
just going to go off of who's our best singer?
you'd like to think so, but it's usually off of who has the biggest ego.
Oh.
Um, and well,
Well, didn't
that
they all kind of sing,
and
or only just the two of them sang?
who say that again?
Did they all sing, or just the two of them?
They all sang.
Mhm.
George, but the thing about the Beatles was, um, how they decided who sang was basically whoever took the lead on writing the song is
Mm.
the one who sang. So like if it was a John led song, he would sing the lead. If it was Paul led song, he would sing the lead. And if George led song, he would sing the lead. And then they would just write songs for Ringo to sing. because he was not a songwriter
What's
back
with
then.
all the
It's like
shit talking on Ringo? Can you tell me about that? Because
I can
even as like not
absolutely,
a huge connoisseur of the Beatles, I'm someone that like same as you. My dad played them. I like the music. I know the hits,
yeah,
but I don't really know
yeah.
a whole lot past that.
It's just the hate on Ringo. Basically, it comes down to the fact that you call him Ringo, and it's a silly name. His real name is Richard Starkey, uh, but he wore a lot of rings, so his nickname
Mm,
was Ringo. But you're in a band with John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison, who are phenomenal songwriters and musicians. They play multiple instruments. They are, I don't want to say prodigious, but they're together. They are some of the best songwriting. Say what you want about your tastes, but they created so much content so long, and all Ringo did was play the drums. That's all.
aw,
Like that's all he did.
but that's a big
He was
job.
just. It's a super important job, and he was an amazing drummer. People shit on him for his drumming. Like he created melodic drum beats.
Hmm.
Like you could listen to just the drum beats of any Beatles songs, and you could really just like, oh, this is Lady Madonna, this is Let It Be, this is, uh, um, something. This is,
Hmm.
uh, All My Lovin'. Like any, they're very distinct and melodious drum parts. But he wasn't fancy. He didn't like. He wasn't crazy. He didn't like to do fills. He didn't like to do anything crazy or anything like that.
Yeah, but who was doing that back then? Because I feel like the craziest drumming is in like metal bands, and that's obviously so different and so
No, I mean, you
not
had
that time period.
you had Keith Moon, you had John Bonham, you had Buddy Rich, Max Roach, uh, people who were probably technically more proficient and just a
Mm,
lot crazier. Like the character Animal on the Muppets.
no,
Familiar with the Muppets?
vaguely.
Okay, this is
That's a
good.
no. Sorry.
That's a no. That's a no.
I'm gonna get canceled for not knowing them.
You're familiar with Kermit? Kermit the Frog, Miss
Yes,
Piggy?
that's a Muppet. Oh, those are the
Those
those
are the
are the
Muppets.
Muppets.
Those are the
Okay.
Muppets.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Wow.
Then
Wow.
oh
Wow.
no. Oh no.
Okay.
If I
We
had a
just blew
producer, I would
something.
ask him to cut this, but I don't.
We just blew something way open here.
Oh
Wow. Wow.
no. Okay, then I do know the Muppets. I don't
Those are
know
the
why.
Muppets.
No, listen, let me explain myself.
Okay. Please, you have to now. You have to. You have to. Like not knowing about the Beatles is one thing. It's like
I know
they're
about the Beatles.
and that's fine. It's like cool, but the Muppets, I mean,
I think I
they just had a movie.
they just had a movie. I thought the Muppets for some reason I just had like a brain aneurysm, just a miniature one. And you said Muppets and I thought about like Elmo and then I thought about like something yellow that looks like Elmo and I just was thinking of just Sesame Street characters.
Well, those are Muppets also.
Oh, no.
Those are also Muppet. I mean, those were Sesame Street Muppets, but they were all Jim Henson creations.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, so the
Yeah, I
Muppets
wouldn't have known
were
that.
Sesame Street, the Muppets, Fraggle Rock. Do you know about Fraggle Rock?
No, but like
Okay.
proper Muppets, we're talking like Miss
Proper
Piggy,
Muppets, talking
Kermit.
Kermit, Miss Piggy, Rolf, Gonzo.
You lost me.
Have you ever seen a Muppet movie? Any of them?
I've I must have seen.
You okay? This is
Was it
I
a TV
can't.
show?
It was there was
Because I do remember seeing like Kermit, Miss Piggy content.
okay. So the original Muppet Show uh was in the 70s.
Hmm.
Not a big deal if you didn't see that. Obviously, way before either of us were born.
Hmm.
Hard to see the reruns. An amazing show. It was like a variety show, and it was great. Um, there was one line from one of the Muppets that I love, where it was one of the people in the band, The Electric Mayhem, Floyd Pepper, who said, "If I didn't know I was a genius, I'd think my music stunk too." Which I just love that line. I was like, that's a good line. But so there's the Muppet Show in the '70s,
Hmm.
which had a whole ton of guest stars. Like Elton John was on there, uh, Dean Martin. You know, those are the only two that I can think of right now.
Sure.
Mark Hamill,
Yeah.
Kiki D, Olivia Newton-John,
I
like
remember that. I remember that there were like celebrity cameos.
all the celebrities on the Muppet Show. They actually started on SNL. The first Muppets were on the first 5 seasons of SNL.
Oh.
Um, but then they had a movie in 1979 called The Muppet Movie.
Hmm.
One of the best, really really good, very funny, holds up. Um, and they had a string of movies after that, like Muppet Take Manhattan, The Great Muppet Caper. They did a Christmas Carol, The Muppets Christmas Carol,
Hmm.
which is one of the best versions of a Christmas Carol.
Okay.
And one of my favorites, Muppets from Space, hilarious movie.
Hmm.
I highly recommend it.
I
Muppet Treasure
maybe
Island
I've
is
seen
solid.
that one because I'm like now I'm just trying to remember and struggling where I would have seen them. I
Well,
mean,
they're
obviously, there's so many references in pop
yeah,
culture to like Kermit and Miss Piggy, but I think I would only see them in other stuff because then they
right,
became like their own celebrities that would do cameos in other movies that had nothing to do
right.
with Muppets.
Yeah, and in the early '90s, there was a cartoon show called The Muppet Babies.
Hmm.
So it was a
Oh, then
cartoon
that's
with
what I know it
like the
from.
Muppet Babies, where it was
Yeah.
baby Kermit, baby Piggy, baby
Hmm.
Gonzo, baby Rolf was the piano playing dog,
Okay.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
there was a character named Animal, who
Hmm.
was a drummer, who was just kind of crazy, like and wild red hair, wild
I
and
remember. Okay, that
yeah.
now I have a visual of Animal.
So he was a drummer for the
Mhm.
band The Electric Mayhem, and they based his character off of Keith Moon. Just a big circle back to they based Animal off of Keith Moon, who was this wild and crazy drummer that
Mhm.
it would sound like two drummers were playing at the same time. He was a drummer for the Who in the '60s and '70s until he died from drugs. Typical story. Um, but yeah, and so like there were wild and there were better drummers than Ringo.
Mhm.
To take it all back to why there's so much hate on Ringo is
That's
because
right.
he was just a drummer. And while that is there's no shame in that. There's
Yeah.
no like it and he was the perfect drummer for the Beatles.
Did he try to write their songs and that maybe he just got left out or didn't want to or was like so selfless that he's like, you guys are good at it, you do it.
It wasn't I don't think it was a matter of selflessness or like try like he wrote Octopus's Garden with the help of George Harrison. Like
Hmm.
Ringo had like the basic chord progression. There's video of this where it's like Ringo's kind of plunking it out on the piano, and George comes over and is like, "Yeah, you should do it this way," and blah 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 blah
Hmm.
blah. But mostly, he didn't care about songwriting. It's like
Yeah.
I just want to be the drummer. Like that's all he cared about. Any interview, it's like I just want to drum, and like
Hmm.
if there's a song to sing that's in my vocal like and he also knew what his vocal range was. Like
Hmm.
he's not going to sing rock ballads. He's not going to sing crazy like he's going to sing down the line country songs. It's like they're going to put me in the movies, like that type of song that type of song. He actually did sing a song that the Beatles gave to the Rolling Stones as their first hit, which was "I Want to Be Your Man," and he sang. I think his version is way better than the Stones version,
Hmm.
but
You just say that as a fan, though, probably.
I mean, I do, and I also am very aware of my bias. Like, I'll defend Ringo
Hmm.
to the death, and
From
it's
what you just
like
told me about Ringo, I believe that he deserves defending and that he got cut a bad hand a little bit.
it's really easy. It's like it's the easy joke. It's like
Yeah.
and I've made those jokes before. It's like you can tell all of the Beatles' personalities by some of their solo work songs. Where it's like, whereas John's like, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Paul's mantra is, like, love doesn't happen in a minute. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all. I only know that when I'm in it, it's not silly at all. George's mantra, if you don't know where you're going, any road can take you there. And then Ringo solo work, all I want to do is boogaloo.
That was perfect because I didn't know where you were going with that. But that one is the easiest to remember of all of
It
those.
really is, and it's so true. All
Yeah.
I do want to do is boogaloo.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, but like, there are obviously better drummers technically,
Mhm.
with technical proficiency, whatever. But like Ringo was a game changer. He innovated pop music. And none of them did it intentionally. Like
Right.
nobody who innovates is like, I'm going to innovate this genre. It's just a matter of like what needs to happen. It's like Ringo was a left-handed drummer who played a right-handed kit. So that in and of itself
Mhm.
changes the whole dynamic of how he plays. It
I'm just
changes
now
the
learning
rhythm
that drum sets come in different hands.
Well, it's like talk about Jimi Hendrix. He played right-handed guitar upside down, so to
Mhm.
play it left-handed.
Yeah.
That immediately changes the whole dynamic of how he plays
Well, wouldn't you learn to? Okay, I'm
and
about to
sound.
ask a very stupid musical question. Bear with me.
Yeah, no worries.
Um,
I just explained to you what the Muppets were. Everything's on the table.
no. Okay, and I already see the error of asking this question. Plow through it. Um, wouldn't you like just because you're inclined when you're born, let's say, right-handed? I'm inclined to use my right hand for stuff. But
Hmm.
for guitar or drums, you're using both hands anyway. It's a naturally ambidextrous task. So don't you just learn to do the thing that like right-handed people do with their right hand? Aren't you just learning to do that then with your right
Not
hand as a left-handed person? Because your left hand still has stuff to do.
right, but it's. I mean, I see what you're saying, and it's not completely wrong. And like you could probably, but um,
Well, with drums, you're just holding
like
sticks, and I'm just watering the
well,
shit out of
it's
this, but you're just holding a
well,
stick in each
it's
hand.
about it's about the strength of the hand, right? And so like like this, we'll just use this as an example. Like
Mhm.
this is a right-handed ukulele, right?
Uh-huh.
And so my right hand is doing the rhythm, and it's doing most of the it's doing the
Yeah.
work of
You
playing.
might as well play something because otherwise the people that are just listening to the audio are getting completely left out.
So like, can you hear that?
Hmm.
So like, what I'm doing with the right hand is I'm just like it's strumming, it's doing the rhythm,
Uh-huh.
and what the left hand is, I'm only thinking about where my fingers are going on the left hand,
Right.
changing with guitar shapes. And so if I did it backwards on the left-handed guitar, like it's a weird thing for me to try to strum with my left hand because
Hmm.
it's the same thing as like writing with your left hand
Yeah.
if you're right-handed or vice versa. Um, where it's like there are inclinations to right or left hand. Some people can play ambidextrously, like that's not
Yeah, because if you just learned that way in the
inconceivable.
first place, like, you know.
You have to, but there is a natural ease when like for me the right-handed guitar, it was just like
Hmm.
that's easy, the right-handed drum set where I'm playing over here where the hi-hats on my left side,
Hmm.
ride cymbals on this side, versus doing this, it's like it's a whole different function.
Got it.
um, but there are ambidextrous players that you can
Right.
absolutely be ambidextrous, just like I'm right-handed but I'm left-footed, like I lead with my left foot.
Interesting.
And it's like it's one of those sort of things where it's like some people are right-handed writing, and some
Hmm.
people those people could also be left-handed playing. It's like
Right.
it's so many different things, but you know that
Like I'm like a
that's
left-handed driver. Like I prefer to steer with my left hand.
okay. Yeah.
I didn't mean to bring it back to cars. I'm just trying to like
Hey,
siphoning
no,
through my head of activities that take both hands to do.
absolutely. And taking it to cars, it's like you only use one foot to accelerate or decelerate, and it's like you have
Unless you have
to,
a manual.
unless you have a manual, in which case you have to use both feet. but like
Which is
on and
so
on.
crazy have you driven a manual before?
Yes, and
Isn't it wild to try to have to
it's
learn to move your left foot?
yeah, I
And you
didn't
have to do it with
like
such
it.
precision too. Like
I
you have
once
to
had to
release the clutch with such precision. I mean, it is like embarrassing when you're having to learn it.
I was so frustrated. The way I had to learn it really was I had to drive from Oklahoma to Kansas because my friend was too tired to drive his car,
Hmm.
and he had a manual, and I was like, I don't I don't have that experience.
Yeah,
And it was luckily it was just highway the whole way. It's like it's not like it. I had to do a bunch of shifting, but it's like,
right. Still
dude,
stressful.
I was the only one who like could handle that stress. There was
Yeah,
like three other people. They were like, I can't. Nope, not gonna do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. It's like fine. I literally have never driven a man. It's like, fine, and that's how I had to learn.
mhm.
It was just like,
It is a very weird sensation, but I think
yeah,
that, I mean, people that just only learn to drive that way and then stay driving that way, it's like they just have the skill set with the left foot now.
yeah. I was a little upset with my kindergarten teacher because
Mhm.
I was ambidextrous back then. Like I used both
Oh.
hands to write, and it was always legible.
Hmm.
And then the kindergarten teacher's like, "No, you have to pick. You have to choose.
Well,
Which
that's
hand are you
just
going to
not her
write with?
job.
Which hand are you going to write with?" And then it
Yeah.
was like, I guess the right. I don't know. And then in college, I broke my arm, and I had to learn how to do stuff with the left hand.
You broke
And
the right arm? Oh,
I'm a little better at it with my
yeah.
left hand now. But so like when I'm playing piano or something like that, I try to do exercises where I'm working
Mhm.
on my left hand dexterity and my hand independence, so I could do anything like either part with either hand. It's
Yeah,
like the
piano is also a really good example because that's another two-hand instrument situation.
right, but there's also like you do certain things with your right, the top keys that
Hmm.
the left hand. The way the piano is set up is like the left hand is where the bass notes go,
Hmm.
and you do the bass line, the bass clef, like rhythm section with the left hand, and you do the melody chord progressions with the right hand.
Mm.
And so that, I don't know how it would be different for left-handed people, but I would imagine that it's maybe a little bit harder. It's like writing on a right-handed desk, you know?
Yeah, I get that.
It's like, you know, a left-handed person can use it. It's just a
Mhm.
little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I guess there's left-handed scissors too.
Yeah.
Well, there should be everything because isn't it like one out of every 10 people? It's like pretty common.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. I don't know the exact statistic, but I read that they live 3 years shorter than everybody else.
Oh, why? Because
Yeah,
they're accidentally stabbing themselves with right-handed
because they
scissors?
just can't handle it.
They can't deal with it. They're the Ringos of people.
Yeah, they are. It's unfortunate that they get the raw end of the deal. But irony of ironies, he will probably be the last Beatle alive.
Oh yeah? Why do you say that?
It's just because God has a sense of humor. That's why. Take
Were
out
you
John
around?
first.
Were
Was
you?
what?
I was gonna
You're
ask.
not gonna ask me if I was around during the Beatles. Like I'm not that.
No,
You don't think
no,
I'm that old, do you?
no. My question. My question is, where were you when Paul McCartney was at the Improv?
I was sitting a foot away from him.
What was that whole night like? Because I remember seeing it unfold on social media and it seemed pretty wild.
It was crazy. It was insane. Um, I was there 2 out of the 3 nights that he was there.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I wasn't there the night that he took all those bathroom pictures, which
Oh,
sounds bad, but it was just like
no, that was a cool photo shoot. I saw
they
all
were
those
in
bathroom photos.
Avery Pearson was there, Dane
Hmm.
Cook, and Owen Benjamin, and I think Omid Singh got a picture with
Wow.
Paul, and all that stuff. And so they were all in the bathroom, and Paul was taking pictures with them. And there's a really funny picture of Judd Apatow, Avery, and Paul standing in the bathroom stall together and stuff like that. And I just am like, oh, why couldn't I have been there that night? Oh, I was there the 2 nights that he didn't take pictures. God
Uh-huh.
damn it! But what I did get to, I was there the first night he came, and that was an insane night because that was like the most star-studded lineup at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was it's like Rogan, Aziz, Judd, Jim Jeffries, who else was there? A host like this,
all
the
massive
celebrities,
headliners.
the celebrities,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just hanging out, and Paul came in, and
Did you think you were like hallucinating? I mean, what is that?
here's what literally happened. I walked in, and he was actually there before I was. So
Mm-hmm.
I walked in, and it was during the time when it was still the lab was the main bar. It was before they moved it
I
back.
remember those years, yeah.
And Rel Battle saw me from the bar. He's like, Baldinger, come over here. And I was like, what's up? And he's like, Paul McCartney's here. I was like, no, he's not. I was like, no, he's not. No, that's it.
What a mean prank.
Why would you say that to me? Why would you say that to me? And he's like, he's right behind you, man. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, anybody who knows me knows that I'm a Beatles fan. So it's like, that would, of course, be the first thing that Rel said to me.
Yeah.
And I turn around, and there he is, just standing there. And I'm just like, what do I do? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do in this situation?
Like sweaty palms.
How am I gonna realize this dream? And literally the week before, I went to a screening of the movie Love and Mercy. Are you familiar with that movie? It's
Of course I'm not.
It's a movie about Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. It's about the creation of Pet Sounds.
Okay.
I went to a screening of that at the Academy of Motion Picture Sciences. I was able to get a ticket, and like everybody who ever played with the Beach Boys was there, which was awesome for me because again, that was another big band that I very much enjoyed and liked. And Brian Wilson was there as well to watch the screening, and I got to meet Brian Wilson there and like shake his hand and I was like, okay, so within this month, I'm meeting both Brian Wilson and Paul McCartney. And it's like, oh my God, I gotta at least talk. Like, all I said to Brian Wilson was I shook his hand and I said, thank you. That's all I said. That's all I said.
That's perfect. That's all you need. And that's such a respectful interaction too.
I didn't ask for a picture. I was just like, hey, Mr. Wilson, thank you.
Yeah.
And he just gave me one of these, okay.
That's very kind.
Yeah, he has mental issues, but it's like, which is true. You can look into it later. We can do a separate episode on the Beach Boys, which I feel like
I just wasn't. I laughed. Now I'm realizing I shouldn't laugh when you go. He has mental issues, and I'm like, oh. I think I just laughed because I was not expecting that. I don't know anything about him, and I was not expecting you to say that next.
He was beat to death by his dad. He was
beat to death by his.
I said deaf. He was beat to death. Like he had hearing loss because his dad, as a child, he was a bad man. He was a bad man. But yeah, sometimes I like to ask people like, who was the worst dad, Joe Jackson or Murray Wilson? And I always say I think Murray Wilson was. Because Brian Wilson would have been Brian Wilson whether or not he was beaten to talent. Yeah. I think Michael Jackson had to be beaten to the prodigy that he was. It's a horrible thing to say. Horrible thing to say, and I apologize to anybody who takes offense to that.
That could be a whole nother podcast, bad dads.
There are some awful dads, and Joe Jackson is one of the worst. But so is Murray Wilson, who is Brian's dad. But Brian Wilson was was a musical genius and everything like that, and he had hearing loss because his dad would hit him whenever he hit a wrong note or whatever, like that sort of shit. My thing about the Beach Boys was like, they're just as important as any other band from that era, like of the importance of rock and roll music. Their problem was the marketing, their name, the Beach Boys.
Wait, why is that a marketing problem? Because they're so famous.
They're very famous, but at the time,
Hmm.
you have a group called the Beach Boys. If they come out with anything other than beach music,
Mm,
they're like, what is this? This isn't the Beach Boys.
yeah,
Whereas like the Beatles, that's not a genre of music. That's just the Beatles became their own genre.
right.
Rolling Stones. Oh, the new Rolling Stones album is out.
Hmm.
What is it this time? Like what,
Well,
The
they would have to be
Doors,
rock and
the Who.
roll, rolling, roll.
Sure, the Stones were a country blues band that
Mm.
played some rock and roll, but yes, they could have gone any direction. They had a bunch of different genre type music. Whenever the Beach Boys came out with anything non surfing related,
Yeah.
it was a pretty big flop. Even though years later, Pet Sounds is considered one of the greatest albums of all time.
Hmm.
Um,
They have such an interesting, this is such a tangent, but they're tied up with Charles Manson.
yes,
So
they
that
are.
to me is like so fascinating. That whole part of that era is so wild to me. And I
It's
don't know which
insane.
one, but one of the Beach Boys has this incredible property in Big Sur
Hmm.
that actually is like one of the only houses down this narrow path that ends at a beach.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's my Beach Boys knowledge, is that I have driven by that property a couple times.
It's important. I mean, that's 100% true. But and the thing is, like, the Beach Boys were the true musical rivals of the Beatles. Like, they
Mhm.
would, the media rival, of course, was the Rolling Stones, but they were never really in competition musically speaking. Like the
Right, and to me, like when I picture them, I picture the Rolling Stones as like a little bit after.
a little like a second after they were
Mm.
they were really the same.
They were
They were really the same
simultaneously.
time. I mean,
I
the
don't know
Beatles
why I
got
affiliate Rolling Stones as being after.
well, they got
Maybe because Mick Jagger's still around.
I mean, most of the Stones are still around. Keith Richards and Mick Jagger are both still around.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes me feel like they're younger.
but they got famous afterwards. So
Okay,
like
that's what it is.
the British invasion
Mhm.
happened because of the Beatles. So the Beatles were the forefront, and so
Right.
everybody that came after them, and like the Stones were marketed as the anti-Beatles,
Mm.
the British rock pop group that wasn't dressed in suits and mop tops and all that stuff, and
Mhm.
they were the anti-Beatles. And then when the Who came along, who were also in that same era,
Right.
they weren't the anti-Stones, they were the anti-Beatles because they were
Mhm.
even more hardcore than the Stones. And then Zeppelin was like, yeah, this is
Yeah,
really heavy, it's like that sort of stuff, and that
that
went
gets
down
even
that
more like in nitty gritty.
exactly, and so there's a lot of, but it all starts with the Beatles, which all starts with everything that led up to the Beatles and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Nobody's a singular entity unto themselves.
Hmm.
But what was I saying? What was this tangent off of?
It was about Brian Wilson.
Brian was meeting Paul McCartney.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
Yes, yes. So I met Brian Wilson like a week earlier. He said
Mhm.
thank you, and that's all I said. And I walked off. And I was like, I got to do that with Paul too. I have to at least shake his hand. I have to
Uh-huh.
just say something. This is like whatever. And this is actually when I bonded with Judd Apatow for like for real.
Mhm.
Like I'd always seen him at the clubs and like we got along fine. But it was when Paul
Does
came
it
in,
take someone like Paul McCartney to level
the
someone
great
like Judd Right.
the great equalizer.
Yes.
When you are in a room with a
With
Beatle,
someone that famous.
there is no other. It is Beatle,
Hmm.
everybody
Everybody
else.
else, exactly.
It doesn't matter if you are the king of Hollywood
Hmm.
or an open micer. Once Paul McCartney walks into a room, you are all not a Beatle.
Yeah. It's
That's
true.
what it is, you know. And Paul walks in and like I walk
What's he
over to
wearing? Like, what's his vibe? Who's he with?
the he's very skinny.
Uh-huh.
He's a vegetarian, so he's
Okay.
very like brittle. But I'm not
You just,
saying
you just
all
roasted all the vegetarian. You're like, he's a vegetarian, so he didn't look healthy
well,
anyway.
no, he look well. Here's the thing: he's very tiny. He's
Hmm.
very like skinny and
Well,
like,
that's probably his age,
and it's
his
definitely his
Britishness.
age has something to do with it.
Hmm.
And that was a joke about vegetarians. Don't
Don't
at
come
me. I
after
know,
me,
like,
people.
I've uh, I've I've eaten salads before. I get
Yeah,
it. It's good,
I don't endorse
and
this.
you know, I you do you.
Hmm.
It's like that's
He looked
figure
thin.
out. He looked thin, but like bopping around, like, oh, that was a nice joke there. Oh, I'm just going to the loo. You know, all that stuff. Like, ooh, yeah.
Was he with like a giant? Did he have like a
No,
posse with him?
no, not at all. He was alone. He
He was
walked in
alone?
alone both times. Both
What?
times he walked in and out alone.
That's the most
Alone.
crazy part. He was not even with one
Insane.
other person?
Insane. But that goes to your point, where it's like, there's probably a lot of people who didn't know who he was
Wow.
because they're not in the zeitgeist anymore.
Yeah.
It's like all those comments, and a lot of them probably were like fake and bots or whatever. But when he did
Mhm.
that collaboration with Kanye, and people were like, "Man, whoever that old guy is, Kanye is putting him on the map." you know. But as I
Wow.
always, it's like I tweeted out when that collaboration happened. It's like they were getting along great until Paul said that the Beatles were bigger than Yeezus,
Hmm.
which is a joke because the Beatles got into big trouble when back in the '60s John Lennon said the Beatles were bigger than Jesus. There you go. There's a little history for you.
I love
People
that.
people burned Beatles records, man.
Yeah.
They did not like having John say that a fact of the matter is that the Beatles currently, right now, are more popular than Jesus Christ, which just happened to be true.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know when the last time Jesus had a hit record, but it certainly wasn't back then. Um,
He's got a great book. You can listen to it on Audible.
is it great? It's
I don't
long.
know.
It's
Much like
long.
every movie you listed, I haven't seen.
It's fine. We're gonna get in so much trouble for this.
No, we're not. I have 8 listeners.
Hey, but if even one of those listeners is either a huge fan
Mhm.
of
Of Jesus,
Jesus or a
a
huge
vegetarian
fan
that loves
of
Jesus.
was a vegetarian, this is gonna blow up, and we're gonna get canceled. I'm gonna get canceled. You're gonna be like, can you believe that this person sabotaged Galina's podcast and spouted his hate rhetoric? And then they're gonna be like, fucking Jew, and I'm gonna be
Listen,
like, ha, anti-Semite. Um,
I'm just gonna wait until this, like, the pinnacle of this podcast would be to get like Vin Diesel on it or something. And then once
absolutely.
that happens, I'll just say all the bad words all at the same time. So I'll be like, that's it, I'm done. That's
And
all
you
the
just,
career I wanted to have.
yeah, because Vin Diesel, he was Groot, right? That's why you want him on.
Because he's what?
He was the voice of Groot, right? That's the only reason. That's why you want him on.
The voice of who? What is this? What?
I was making a joke because obviously he was in the Fast and the Furious franchise, but I called him by his voiceover credit, which was in the Marvel movie Guardians of the Galaxy as the character of Groot,
Never saw it.
where all of his lines were "I am Groot," except for one part where he said "We are Groot." But whatevs.
Of course, I hadn't seen it. Anyway,
Of
back to
course
Paul
not.
McCartney at
It's
the
okay.
Improv.
Back to Paul McCartney at the Improv. So I go over. Judd makes eye contact with me. And we both know exactly what we're both thinking. It's like,
Mhm.
we gotta meet Paul. We gotta meet Paul. Like, and
Mhm.
he comes up to me and he's like, "Do I just go up to him? I mean, I have all of his. Like, I've put so many of his music in my movies, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I can't relate to that, but like, I have all of his albums, and like, I mean, if anybody has a chance to like talk to him
Mhm.
like for real, it'd probably be you. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna be right there next to you. I'm
I
gonna
can't
be.
believe he's by himself.
Yeah, it was shocking that but he sat in the corner. It was during Comedy Juice
Mhm.
on a Wednesday night, and he talked to Judd for a little bit, and I just kind of like tapped him on the shoulder.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Paul, thank you. And he's like, all right, right,
Your hero said right to you. I
right,
love
right,
that.
right. And then that was the only interaction I had with him that night. He went to the bathroom, went,
That's
and it was
enough for
like,
a lifetime,
that was
though.
enough. That would have been enough for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And because he was in town to play Dodger Stadium, which I
Mm,
couldn't get tickets to, and
yeah.
people were making fun of me for that. And
Oh,
then I was like, "Oh, really? I fucking met him! Ha!"
does he live in London?
I'm sure he has a house there. I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know where he lives. Like, I know the history. I don't know current
Yeah,
stuff
where he's at.
about him. Um, but then that would have been enough, right? That would have been enough. Then I was there on a Tuesday night, the next Tuesday, and it was like half full. Like this, comedy just was packed, and it was like
Mhm.
a huge night. Everybody was there. It was like classic comedy juice night. And then the next Tuesday was just kind of like it was half full. It was still a good lineup, but just was like one of
Yeah, just a
those
calm night.
quiet nights. Tuesday night at the Improv, and he walks in again alone.
This is like almost a week later.
There's a week later, and he
Wow.
walks in again, and I'm sitting in the back booth of the Improv.
Hmm.
Jim Jeffries is on stage telling anal sex jokes,
Hmm.
and Paul sits down right next to me,
Oh my God.
and we just are laughing at Jim Jeffries together.
That's insane. I would
And
die. How can you
he
even
didn't.
focus on Jim Jeffries still?
I wasn't, but I
Yeah.
was laughing both because I was giddy
Hmm.
and I was like, I can't like. He's watching the show.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna be that guy's like, hey Paul, I
Yeah.
know you're in here trying to. I'm gonna talk to you right now.
Right. Because he
No,
would just get up and go sit somewhere else.
exactly. I'm gonna sit next to Paul, and we're gonna watch Jim Jeffries.
Hmm.
And when he gets up, I'll wait a few minutes, and then I'll get up. Just so he doesn't think I'm trying to follow him. And
Uh-huh.
that's exactly what happened. We watched, and then the end of the show happened. He got up, left. A few minutes later, I got up, and I was like, I just sat and watched a show next to and with Paul McCartney. I am good for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Did
That
you
was
try to find
until,
him?
I mean, he left pretty quickly after that. I walked out the same way he walked out,
Hmm.
but I saw him walk out into the patio area,
Oh,
like
okay.
to leave, and it was
Hmm.
like I just was like I checked outside. I was like, oh, okay, he's gone. All right, that's fine.
By himself again?
By himself, completely
That's,
alone.
that is like maddening to me that someone that famous would just like be
Insane,
out on their own.
especially because of what happened to John. You know, outside the Dakota, just two
Yeah.
in the back of the head,
Silly.
done. Awful, but he it was a dead night. It's not. I'm sure that he had I'm sure there was probably like Secret Service around him that I just couldn't see, like just
I
like
would think
swatting him.
someone
But
that famous just going
from
out in
from
public.
from my perspective, he was completely like there was nobody around him. He wasn't
Mhm.
surrounded by anybody.
Yeah.
Um,
It just blows my mind anytime it's like I mean, we're talking about an icon.
yeah,
Like and the fact that he, just happens to be like also a frail old man.
yeah, yeah. And then the third time he visited was like 2 days later on like Thursday, and I wasn't. I didn't. I was at like a different show. I
Mhm.
was performing, and I couldn't
Yeah.
go to hang out at the Improv. And that was the night he took all those bathroom pictures, and I was just like, fuck.
Oh,
But that was like it was insane. It was insane. It was like I don't believe that it happened, but it did.
mhm.
I like Stephen Kramer Glickman was there. We were like going crazy about it. Like we were talking
Yeah.
about it as well. And just like it's insane. It's insane that he's just here.
What an
Um,
amazing moment. Like to have
yeah,
that as an adult and to have it be like tied in with had you not been doing comedy, you wouldn't have ended up in the same room with him.
right. And truth be told, like this is one of those like if you will it, it is no dream things, you
Mm-hmm.
know? When I first started comedy in LA, I had written this like goals things, and one of the goals was to meet Paul McCartney.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
There you
and
go.
I knew how I was gonna do it. I was gonna get in with people who worked at SNL. I was gonna
Mm-hmm.
get on SNL. I was gonna meet Lauren Michaels, who knew Paul McCartney, and I was gonna have Lauren introduce me to Paul McCartney. That was the that was the through
Yeah,
line.
that was the order of
That
operation.
was the order of operations. But it was like, obviously, uh, still could happen.
Yeah.
But it was like one of those moments where it was like, oh my god, I can't believe that I met Paul McCartney, and it was a great moment, and it was like I had met Brian Wilson a week earlier, and it
Mm-hmm.
was just like these music icons,
Yeah.
you know, like I know that like there are people who are friends with like Sean Lennon and Julian Lennon that I know, and Jacob Dylan and like all these people who are like sons of the icons and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And it's
But
like, oh
that's
man,
different.
it's different, but it's also like it's
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 still
one,
royalty, but it's
it's
different.
still royalty. It's they're friends with the princes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh man, that'd be awesome to know them and hear stuff from their perspective. But
Yeah.
also, I know that that wouldn't be something they would want to talk about. That's I
Right.
wouldn't. It's like
Because that's all anybody wants to talk to them
they
about.
don't want to talk about their dads. They want to be friends with
Yeah.
normal people, and like I can be normal, but I
I
just
wish you
have
would
to
say it with
hide.
more self-esteem. I can be normal.
I can be normal. I can be normal. I can be like I was able to sit next to Paul and pay attention to a Jim Jeffries set. I could handle Jacob Dylan. I could handle.
Honestly is a really huge deal though, because I have been in those situations where it's just like, oh, I can't even function. I can't think straight just being so starstruck.
When was the first time you were starstruck?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know that I can remember the first time, but probably one that like sticks out in my mind is I met Denzel Washington at
Wow.
work one time. And
Okay.
just the way that he interacted with me was just like so silly. And I was not, I had like offered him a water and he went, nah, you'll put something in it. I was not expecting anything like, and it threw
Amazing.
me for such a loop. And it took me so long. Like, if any other person had that interaction with me, I would have been on the ball. I would have understood what was
Yep.
going on. But
Yeah.
because it was him and because it was so unexpected, my brain started short circuiting. And I was just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
What did he just say to me?
Yeah. No, I had that. So the first time I was ever started, and truth be told, like as amazed as I was to see and be around Paul McCartney, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it was too like I don't think I was starstruck. It was
Yeah.
something different. It was like I can't believe this is happening, but I wasn't like too starstruck
You
to
go
like
into
function.
shock the way that you would if like your leg just got cut off or something. I mean, not quite like that, but it's a
Right.
shock where you're like, you can't even process that it's going on
Right. It
while
was
it's
like it
happening.
was not real. It was like, oh, so I'm just life is just happening to me right now. Like
Uh-huh.
I'm just going around for the ride, and I'm just gonna let whatever happens happens. I'm not actually in control of this situation. Um, the first time that I was truly starstruck surprised the shit out of me because I did not expect it.
Hmm.
Because I was probably 4 or 5 years into comedy, and I had met pretty much everybody
Hmm.
that was famous when I was a kid and had done shows with them, and
Yeah.
like, and I was always able to talk and be colleagues with everybody. Like it wasn't a big deal. It was like, yeah, we're as soon as we're on the same lineup, there's no more levels. That
Hmm.
it's just like if you're on a showcase lineup, everybody has an equal shot of doing great and doing poorly. That's just the way it is. Um, but then I met Dave Foley, and if you don't know who Dave Foley is, he was on Kids in the Hall. He was on news radio. Hilarious, hilarious comedian and actor.
Okay.
Um,
My
And
American references don't start until 94. I should just.
that's fine. I think that, I mean, Kids in the Hall was on in the mid
Oh,
90s.
okay.
Another Lorne Michaels produced
Hmm.
sketch show with
I bet if I
Dave
saw
Foley.
his face,
You'd know him if you saw
you
him.
keep talking and I'm gonna look him up, and then
Okay.
I'll be like, oh, I know who that is.
Um, it,
Dave Foley.
he was just a big part of my comedic childhood. Like, he was
Oh, I
just,
know who that is.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was on News Radio, which was one of my favorite shows. And if you haven't seen News Radio, I highly recommend it. It's
Mhm.
got one of the best pilots of all time, and the
Okay.
series is amazing. Dave Foley, uh, Stephen Root, Joe Rogan,
Hmm.
Andy Dick, Phil Hartman, the works. Just an all-star cast, and just
R.I.P. And of course, I wouldn't know who Phil Hartman was if I didn't know about the awful murder.
yes, yes,
As a
he
true
was.
crime fan, that's where things
I love how
everything
you
is
know Phil
tying in for
Hartman.
me.
I love how you know Phil Hartman because of true crime and not because of his legendary comedy work. Like the voice of Troy McClure, the voice of Lionel Hutz, SNL, a legendary SNL cast member.
Listen, I would have known all of the Muppets if they had been brutally murdered.
Incredible, just incredible. I love that.
I
That's
have such
amazing.
tunnel vision in life.
So many people so many people don't think they do, but we all have our tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Like I
Oh
see
no, I'm
everything
aware of mine.
I see everything through the tunnel vision of the Beatles.
Hmm.
All my so musically, everything I know about music,
Hmm.
I learn through the lens of how it relates to the Beatles.
Okay.
So it's like
Fascinating.
the reason I know so much about other musicians and bands
Hmm.
from the 60s and 70s is because of how the Beatles influenced, like
Hmm.
why they are this way is because the Beatles did this, and why and like from the 50s and the 40s and stuff like that, is like this is what influenced the Beatles to do this,
Hmm.
and like all that stuff. And it's like during this time period in jazz and blues and R&B, this was happening, which in like all that stuff. And it's like while Sgt. Pepper was the first concept album in popular music, Sun Ra was doing all of that stuff in jazz and fusion and all that stuff. It was happening in this area of the music demo, in like all that stuff. But it was all because I wanted to know more about the Beatles and
Yeah.
how they got their influences, where it came from, and how their influences influenced other people to make more innovations. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's very similar. It's like I think that I can say, how am I trying to put this so it doesn't sound totally crazy? But like I can relate to the fandom of it because I
Yeah.
have my things that I'm like that obsessed with and
Right.
that into and can't get enough of. And categorically, it's like a whole bunch of it. I don't think there's like specifically one thing where I'm like, oh my God, I know everything about. I wouldn't even say I know everything about Fast and the Furious because I probably
I don't.
know a lot, but at the same
Yeah.
time, there's people that are way more into it than I am that like
Absolutely.
went to the service when Paul Walker died. They
Mm-hmm.
like I haven't even been to the house in LA that like is their house, which I'm
Yeah.
kind of waiting to like meet the right person romantically and have him take me there and propose to me in front of the
I
building. Just
understand that.
saying.
That's your proposal at what's it
Yeah.
called, at SeaWorld, where the dolphins fly
That's my
overhead. Yeah,
SeaWorld.
that's your SeaWorld.
With no abused animals, but just
Yep.
like one very confused family that lives in downtown LA. uh,
Probably some abused animals,
yeah.
but
But I have
uh,
that thing of where I like get so excited about those things
yeah,
and where I wouldn't ask gatekeeping type questions. I
right,
just get so stoked at the prospect that like somebody could be as passionate about something as I can.
right.
And it's a few things. It's like true crime, it can be cars, it can be like a whole
And
number of things that I'm like, I'm not an expert in any one, but I like
right,
love all of them so much.
and that's the thing for me. It's like I know a lot about the Beatles, but I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of every date and time, and
Mhm.
like I
You're
have
pretty
some of that.
close. I've
I have
seen you
some
go
of
to
that.
town.
I have I haven't. I don't think I've written any of it down. I have some of that. I have like dates and like all that stuff.
Mhm.
But there are people like, because I did a deep dive on the Beatles on Jackie Kashian's podcast Dork Forest, where I went through, and at the end of the
Mhm.
hour and a half, I was like, no, we only got to 1966.
I love
um,
that.
But like, because she didn't know anything about the Beatles, which is one
Yeah.
of those things that is mind blowing to me because it took me down this path of like, oh, are things that I think are common knowledge
Mhm.
not common knowledge? Like in my
A
mind,
1000%. Just the fact that you're like, it's the most popular band in the world. I'm like, yeah, 50 years ago.
well, but also in 2009 they were the number one best-selling band in the world.
Were
You know,
they
it's
really?
like they're not just they're like
I wouldn't have
they're
guessed that.
still most popular. They're still one of the most popular bands in the world.
Mm.
Just not. They're obviously not innovative anymore. You know,
Right.
they're not putting out new music. They're not doing any of that stuff. But like
And we'll also,
the
how many of their people that are super huge fans, aside from you, are people that are in like a
right
high risk age group for COVID?
most most of them are. You
Hmm.
know, like there's plenty of people who are my age and younger who are getting into the Beatles and love the
Right.
Beatles and when I did Jackie's podcast and I said some information that I got some dates mixed up and some like just a few information a
Did
little bit
people
wrong.
come for you in the comments?
Not come for me, like not attacking,
Hmm.
but like, hey, just letting you know,
Mm.
this actually happened in 1958, and they were
Wow.
doing this and blah 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 blah. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. And when I read it, I was like, yeah, that is right. That I
Mhm.
did get that
Yeah.
wrong. But when I read it, I was like, yeah, I knew that, but I guess I didn't say it correctly, you know, because I just jumbled up. But
Mhm.
it's one of those things where it's like I am out of that gatekeeper phase like completely where
Mhm.
it's like now when somebody says I love the Beatles, that just makes me happy. I'm like, good. I'm
Yes,
really
it
glad.
should.
And that's what it should be because gatekeeper fans are the worst. And I say
Yeah.
that as a former gatekeeper fan. And it's one of those things where it's like you have to just let people like what they like and if they don't like something that's okay too. If they
Or if
don't
they
like
don't like it
something
as
as
much as
much,
you.
yeah, as much
Yeah.
as you, that's fine. You just have to like be okay with it. It's
Mhm.
like them not liking something is not a personal attack on you.
Right.
That's the other thing. And it's like
But
don't
you got to
have
get to like an emotional stability in your own life.
yeah, don't have
The people
fandom
that went
turn
to
into a
attack the
competition.
grocery store don't feel that way.
Yeah. Well, it's, yeah, don't have fandom be a competition like
Yes.
amongst your own fans. Like Star
Yeah.
Wars fans and Star Trek fans, go at it with each other.
They're sucking
Sure.
the joy out of it for other
You
people
know,
that just want to
whatever
be
you
like,
want to
oh, I
do.
want to be excited about Star Wars with you, and you're not letting me because I don't know what year Yoda did the whatever he did. I don't know. Haven't
Exactly.
seen any of the Star Wars movies. Are we
That's
surprised?
fine.
Have you
Not
listened to
at
this
all.
podcast yet? You should know. Of course, I haven't seen it. If you've listened this far, duh. Of course, I haven't seen
Hilarious. But it's like, but that's the other thing. And the other thing people try to do to Beatles fans specifically is to try to get them to hate on the other music. Like,
it.
they're like, when I said, like, I like the Beatles, and they go, like, I always like the Stones better. It's like,
Okay.
okay, you can like both. Like, it doesn't, like,
Yeah.
what, it doesn't have to be one or the other.
They're not mutually exclusive.
They're not mutually exclusive. They liked each other. You
Yeah.
know, they had a friendly rivalry like
Mhm.
most musicians, comedians all do, where it's
Mhm.
like, oh, we got to up our game because this just came out and this is great. Okay, I got to start working. I got to, like it's that friendly rivalry. But it is always funny hearing people like uh, compare the two because John Lennon would say shit like, when because the Beatles did give the Stones their first number one hit in the UK, which is "I Want to Be Your Man." When asked about it, John just goes like, "Well, yeah, we weren't going to give them anything good, were we?"
Oh, savage.
John was a prick, but
Wow.
he was an asshole. But also, he worked on himself up until he retired in '75 to try to fix all of his demons and
Mhm.
problems and go on this kind of like I'm sorry, like mental health, be a stay-at-home dad,
Mhm.
be better to everybody tour, and he was just starting to come back. Then he got shot, but it is what it is. Um, but yeah, it's this thing where it's like fandom is insane, and I don't. It's very toxic if you get
It
lost in
can
it.
be. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that that's a good way to look at it. And you got to also observe yourself doing it and catch yourself doing it and be like, if I'm just trying to ask these questions or be this aggressive or this like territorial with a thing that I really love, aren't I sucking the joy out of it for not only the other people, but for yourself? You're sucking the joy out of it by like not letting other people come in and share it with you and be like, yeah, this is really cool. This is really great music or great movie. Like,
100%.
let's talk about how great it is instead of just sucking all the joy out of the room.
Because a lot of times what happens is like when you ask those test questions, you force people into trying to think of what the right answer should be.
Yeah,
Like
and then
there's
it's awkward.
there's a right answer.
Yeah.
As if there's a right answer. It's like, well, I want to seem cool and I
Hmm.
want to seem like I know shit. So I'm going to say that my favorite album is the White Album because that's like their
That's what the cool
stripped
kids.
down and that's what the cool ones are. And even if you don't know more about it, or if your
Mm.
real favorite is, if your real favorite is A Hard Day's Night, that album, or is the early stuff or whatever it is, it's like, it's okay. Whatever it is, it's good. Like, whatever you like it, and be
Hmm.
unapologetic about what you like. Don't make other people feel shitty about things that they like, even if they don't like it, quote, as much as you do. Because you
Hmm.
don't know that either.
Yeah, you
You
don't.
don't know what's going on in their brains.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we should end it there. That's such a good positive like piece of advice for people to take away because
Yeah.
I think like there's a lot of stuff that we can get into.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
like there's new things coming out always for people to get excited and passionate
100%.
and fall in love with and be fans of and let it be a lesson to
Let
us.
it be a
Ah!
lesson. Very good. That's awesome. Yeah. Great. Speaking
Didn't
of,
even do that on purpose, but I'll take it.
oh,
I'll take the credit.
and speaking of, check out the new trailer for the new recut of the Let It Be movie by Peter Jackson. That's coming out next year, which is going to
Okay,
be awesome.
cool.
It's called Get Back, which was
Mhm.
actually the original title of the Let It Be album. Um, but it's like the first movie, Let It Be, was basically a documentary about kind of the Beatles creating an album,
Mhm.
and it was the last one that was released. The last one that was recorded, but the second to last one that was released. Um, and it basically shows the breakup of the Beatles.
Mm.
It's like it shows the tension, it shows like their animosity towards each other, just like that they're sick of each other and all that stuff. That's what the original kind of shows. It's like it's
Mhm.
fun when they're playing, but it's
Yeah.
like you can tell that they're just like over each other. In the movie Let It Be, like
Mhm.
there's a part where George and Paul are talking, and George is just like, "Look, I'll play what you want me to play, or I won't play at all if you don't want me to play. Whatever you want, I'll play. Whatever it is." Just super
Yeah.
passive aggressive, just
Just
like
exhausted.
siblings fighting, and it's just like,
Mhm.
oh my god, they do not like each other right
Yeah.
now. They are so on each
I'm
other's
an only
nerves.
child, so can't relate.
Okay, that's fair. Just like your good friend, like if you've ever lived with a group of people, and
Mhm.
it's like, oh, there's moments where it's like,
Yeah.
you son of a bitch, you know
Oh no, I
exactly
just
what
said
you're
that to be
doing.
like negative and non-relatable. I'm just like, what can I say right now to completely go against the advice that we've been giving for the last half hour? I'm an only child. Why don't you say something that I can relate
Oh man.
to?
But there's like 56 hours of footage.
Oh, wow. Okay.
56 hours of footage. And so Peter Jackson is going through all that stuff and recutting it. And I
Mhm.
saw the trailer, and it's like, oh, he found all the footage that makes it seem that they like each other.
Yeah.
It seems like, oh, there's hope for this friend group. Oh, that's great. And so like, I'm really excited to see it because
Mhm.
I'm always excited to see new stuff that I haven't seen before about the Beatles and
Mhm.
all that good stuff. So this is a unsolicited plug for the new movie. I'm not getting paid at all for it. Uh, not that
That's
I,
awesome. It's nice that you can like something that hasn't been around in so long and you can still be
yeah.
stumbling upon like new information.
Yeah, and it's not even like it's new, but it's like
It's new to you.
it's new to me, and it's just like footage that you haven't seen before.
Mhm.
I have so much bootleg Beatles tracks where they're playing like songs that they never made it to the album. Like there's a lot of stuff like George's first solo album, All
Mhm.
Things Must Pass, was just basically filled with songs that didn't make the cut of the Beatles albums, like the last few
Mhm.
Beatles albums. And I have versions of those songs where the Beatles are like rehearsing them, and it's so cool to hear that. I was like, oh, that's awesome, hearing those
Oh yeah,
Beatles harmonies and all that stuff.
I can
And
imagine.
I think a lot, nice. I can imagine
Oh,
John Lennon. Is that?
now I
I
feel like
catch it.
you're
I
looking
catch
for
it.
it.
I did look for that one. I was like, I could let that go, but
Just
I could
let it
let
go.
that Gail Godot, but I will not. Huh? Imagine ruined it. Somebody did, and I can never listen to it ever again, which is sad for me. But
Mm,
that's okay. Did you see Wonder Woman 84?
not yet.
Yeah, it's okay.
I might
Um,
as well just add it to the list of movies I've never seen.
yeah, it's fine. It's fine that you didn't see it. Don't go out of your way. Not that you would have to, because it's
I don't
streaming
have
on
to.
HBO Max.
Yeah.
So you really you'd have to go out of your way to not go out of your way to see it. And I would say do that. Um, but yeah, it's just like it's fun to have new stuff coming at you, which is nice.
It is. Well, thank you for educating me. I learned so much. I did. I don't mean for that to sound
The Muppets,
sarcastic.
the Beatles,
Mhm.
fandom in general.
Yeah.
Don't be a gatekeeper fan, guys and
Yes.
girls,
Yeah.
and
That's our
everybody in
takeaway.
between the spectrum. Whatever you identify as, however you feel, whatever is in your heart, let it be open to being accepting of other people who like things that you like,
Hmm.
and not be a judger on the level that they like it at.
I love that.
Yeah.
So where can people find you?
I'm at Jeff Baldinger on Twitter and Instagram, at Jeffrey Baldinger on TikTok.
You joined TikTok?
I
This is
did join
huge.
TikTok. I did
Yes.
join TikTok,
All right.
and
Guys,
I
find him on
am.
TikTok. Let's get him addicted.
Let's pump it up. I'm not popular on that app right now.
You will be. Just wait.
Yeah. So JeffreyBaldinger. And yeah, that's at Jeff Baldinger on Twitter and Instagram. That's where you can find me, and at Jeffrey Baldinger on TikTok. And jeffreybaldinger.net is my website where I put all my shows that aren't happening anymore because of the pandemic. But
You'll
whenever
be
there
back.
is one, well, I actually do have a Zoom show on January 31st, but it's a private event, so you can't go, even if you wanted to.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And
Thank you for having me. This is really,
I
really
really
fun.
enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
learned a lot. And everybody, thank you for tuning in. This has been Podcast and Curious with me, and stay curious.